Sea Org doesn't want them to leave till they've gotten them to confess to all their crimes, searched all their belongings to make sure they're not taking anything, and sign an affidavit saying they'll never sue the church, they'll never speak badly out against the church, and that everything they did was wrong and everything the church did was wonderful. And by that time, they've hoped to have convinced them to stay anyway, but if they have to leave, they want all of that done first. So there was a couple who twice left and then came back. They left without permission, they came back. So they were considered a very high security risk. My job was...
Now, who were they? Do you remember?
Sean Brennicky and his wife, I forget her name. So they had left twice, they'd gone to his parents' house, 30 minutes away, but now they were considered a high security risk, even though they came right back. It was my responsibility to make sure they didn't do it again, or that anybody else didn't do it. I had to have them under 24-hour security watch.
What does that mean?
That means 24 hours a day, someone is with them making sure they don't go anywhere.
And who did you use to watch them?
No one was allowed to do it because it's very strict in Scientology that if it's not your job, you don't do it in the Sea Org. There's policies on it. Only do your own job. That was nobody's job. There was no job to do that.
Right. So.
But it fell under me. So I'd have to convince people to do it, convince people to let their junior do it, etc. But at one point, I couldn't find anybody to do it. So I had to put a mattress outside their door and tie my arm to their door so that if they left, it would wake me up. It would pull my arm and wake me up.
So you're sleeping like this?
For, I don't know, a while, a week or two. And so that was pretty ridiculous.
So you didn't want this to happen to you?
No.
I can understand that.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I was doing it to people, and I regret everything I ever did.
Did you feel bad about it at the time?
I did. I felt really bad. I so badly wanted to be like the person who opens the cage and lets the birds fly away, you know what I mean? I wanted to let them go so badly, and I wanted to go with them. And the people who did finally get permission to go, I was thinking, take me. I was jealous of them. Not jealous, but
envious.
Envious, yeah, that's the right word. I was so envious, oh my God, they're free, you know? And they're so brave to have persevered through all of that, you know, and I never thought I could do it. And anyway, then there was a reorganization, and I became the ethics officer and then the director of inspections reports for the entire building, which is 600 staff.
And what was the name of that post?
I was the ethics officer, then they had the Department of Inspections and Reports. I was the Director of Inspection Reports. For this now, it was called the Flag Liaison Office. International Training Org became part of it, but this is more 400, 600 staff.
That's the FOLO.
No, that's, the FOLO is the same, but lower. There's a FOLO in every continent, a FOLO in Europe.
Yeah.
This was the FLO, which is the senior organization to all of the FOLOs.
Okay.
They're lower management.
So this was a pretty
senior We were
post.
middle management. Well, I was also the security chief. That fell under me. The security
for the Flag
chief
Liaison Office.
for the Flag Liaison Office. And this is the Hollywood Guarantee building on Hollywood Boulevard.
HGB.
They have and they have the life exhibition there. And then they have the whole of middle management is there. And then OSA is there. But because OSA is very sensitive, Office of Special Affairs, they deal with all the legal things. So the church, I wasn't the Director of Inspections and Reports for that because you have to have special clearance and that's all super confidential.
But
I was the security chief for them.
But
we did security for the whole building.
Is the international level of management?
They're considered upper middle management.
So it's Wyzant and Smyant.
Yeah, it is international to that degree. The only thing above it is RTC.
Right.
And but they are Church of Scientology International. Legally, their legal term is Church of Scientology.
The people at the building where you were.
Yeah,
right.
That's Church of Scientology International.
Right.
So.
So that's a big job.
Yeah, and it was me and a girl younger than me who was about 14 for the whole building, and 3 or 4 security guards. It was also my job to collect all the statistics every week. And there were a good 10 or 15 people at a time who wanted to leave, and I was responsible for watching them, handling them to stay. There's policies, I guess, for public relations reasons that say if you want to leave, you have to be shipped out within 24 hours. Mm-hmm. But no one ever leaves in under
I've never heard of
anyone
leaving within 24 hours.
No one ever does.
Never, not even I've never even heard of a month, but maybe. But I've
6
never
months
heard of
to a
it.
year, and you're lucky. 2 years sometimes. Because one of the main reasons is they're trying to break you down, and another reason is you have to get a confessional before you go, and there's no one to give the confessionals. No one had that job.
So how did you deal with it?
They'd have to convince an auditor to do it, convince someone to take some time to do it. The organization is so bureaucratic, it's so ridiculous because there's all these jobs and there's all these policies, and you have to do this, you have to do this, you have to do this, but you can't do this, but you have to do this, but you can't do this. And there's an expression, make it go right. You can't say, I can't do this because there's no one there to do it. It's like, make it go right, you have to do it anyway. You could get an order or like a program written and it says, I don't know, set up computers in this office and set up a whole computer system, but there'll be no money to do it. But that's no excuse. So you try and get permission for money and you're told no money. There's no money to do it. But you still have to do it. So you have people yelling at you saying do it, and then you try and get the money and they say there's no money. And everyone is just like going round and round in circles. It's the most unbelievable thing you've ever seen.
You're ordered to do it, there's no money, so they come in and they say,
make it go
right. You have
right.
to do this, and you say, well, I didn't get the money approved, and they say,
your counterintention.
Yeah, they say you're reasonable, which to us now sounds like a good thing to be.
Reasonable.
But in there, they even preach like you should be unreasonable, but
because they have a policy suppressive reasonableness. So if you take an excuse for something, like there's no money, you're being suppressively reasonable.
Or if you're being logical.
Very bad thing to do.
Yeah, exactly.
Or they'd get an order, you get an order, send these people out to this other organization to handle them because they're not doing well. But it was no one's job to go. So they'd have to find people to go. But there's also a policy that says, don't do anything other than your job. Don't let your juniors do anything other than their job. So you'd say, there's no one to go, and these people can't go because it's off policy. Then there's another policy that says you cannot use policy to stop. So you're using policy to stop, you're being suppressively reasonable, and you're being counterintention. And people spend months trying to find someone to do something, and there's hardly any new people coming in, and there's people leaving. So
how did you stay?
The International Training Org, when I first got there, had 100 staff, and a year and a half later, had 40.
There's always constant struggle and arguments between the staff because someone can say, oh, look, I'm right, look at this policy, and the person says, yeah, well, I'm right, look at this policy, and they conflict, the policies conflict each other, and the third person can say, and if they're higher in post, most people listen to them and say, oh, no, look, I have this policy here, but you could always find a policy to conflict that one. I mean, it just doesn't make sense.
I always remember there's another policy in which there's a thing called an admin scale, and there's a list of the importances of things. And one of the most important things is purpose, and then policy comes below purpose.
Yeah,
so then,
how do you make it?
Then if you had something to do and you said, but that's counter to this policy, they'd say you're using policy to stop because purpose is higher than policy.
Oh, yeah.
But then if you follow the purpose without the policy, you're off policy. So you're just spinning like a top.
And there's
always another policy to contradict what you're saying.
It sounds amusing now. I mean, it makes me laugh.
Hell.
But in reality, when you are there, this is how it goes. Do that right now. Sir, I can't because we didn't get any money. You're fucking counterintention. Do it right now. You're in lower conditions. You're going to the rehabilitation project force. You're going to eat in the stairwell. You're on beans and rice. You fucking get it done. That's what it is.
So much profanity.
Yeah.
That it's unbelievable.
One day they had a newspaper or someone come to do a story, and it was supposed to be a good story on Scientology. So all the staff were brought into a room and told, no swearing today, no swearing. I know swearing is how we get things done. Ron Norton said this. I know swearing is used a lot, and it's how we do things, ha-ha, and chuckles, and we have to use it to get things done. That's how we get things done around here. But just, for public relations reasons, today don't swear. So, I mean, you have these people, and there are some people, and there's an organization called the Commodore's Messenger Organization. They have the authority. If they don't like what you say to them or didn't get something done for them, they have the authority to immediately send you to what's called the Rehabilitation Project Force, which for a year or two or longer, you will wear all black, you will run everywhere you go, you will not speak to anybody, you will eat crappy food, you'll get paid $6 a week or a quarter of whatever everyone else gets paid. You'll have to repent, you'll have to, say you did everything wrong, you'll have to do endless confessionals. And my brother was on this for I think a year and a half. Before they said, oh, we made a mistake in sending you to it. But other people are on it for 3 years. Some people have been on it for 6 years before they were allowed off. they're allowed to send you immediately. So they come and say, get this done right now. And they're not even your senior. They're just someone else entirely trying to get something else done, but they have like ultimate authority. They're supposed to be L. Ron Hubbard's word on everything. So they come into an office. Astra, what are you doing? Oh, sir, I'm doing this. Well, where's this product? I didn't get to it. Well, fucking get it done. You're counter-intention. Fuck you. Go to ethics. Write up your W's. You are not going home until this is done. That was what it was like. That was my life for like 4.5 years. You could be doing a good job on what you're doing, but if you didn't do something for them, they could just scream at you and no one could do anything and you couldn't report them.
How did you survive?
I don't know. I just went more and more crazy. That's why I said I got to the point where I was suicidal, because I was terrified. Just more and more and more and more. I just went more and more crazy. But in a way, you get used to it. But in a way, you never get used to it, because I guess I got used to it. And I thought it was, just the way it was. And I just kept hoping. We were always in a condition of, we were always being told we weren't getting our job done. The whole building, the whole organization, we weren't getting our job done. We weren't expanding Scientology. Scientology wasn't expanding. We had to handle it. But we always kind of had the idea that it was going to soon change. We were going to change it, and then everything would be okay, and we wouldn't be yelled at all the time.
Where
and we
was
wouldn't
this
get
coming
in trouble.
from? Was this coming from RTC?
Mm-hmm. And
from the CMO?
Yeah. We would have briefings. We had 2 reorganizations where I was there, where they reorganized everything, and they said, it's not expanding under you guys. We're going to do this. Everyone got assigned a lower condition. You're all in treason. And
the whole building?
Yeah, and we ran it for a year. No one was allowed to take a day off. No one was allowed anything for a year.
Let me ask you something, Astra. This is all going on at the management level, but the public Scientologists are not aware of this at all, are they?
No.
How is that? How do they manage to keep the public Scientologists from finding out what it's really like?
We were made to drill. I'll explain what we did. Everyone would go into a room. We would be briefed. You are not allowed to tell anybody what is going on here. If you have a problem, you're not allowed to say it. If you have anything going on, you're not allowed to tell them. If you disagree with anything, you can't say anything. All you can do is write a report on it. Even if your spouse or brother or sister or friend is in a lower level organization, you can't tell them anything. Under no circumstances can you tell your family anything. Then they would have us pair up, and one of us say, you'd pretend to be my father. And you'd say, Astra, how's school going? And I would have to give my answer, an acceptable answer. Oh, I'm going to school, it's wonderful. Astra, aren't you working kind of long hours? No, I'm not. We get off at this time, and it's all legal, and it's all good, and I love work anyway. But, we probably shouldn't talk about it or change the subject.
So you're drilling how to lie to people?
We're getting regularly drilled on how to lie. And if you didn't lie, if I told my dad I'm not going to school, I'm working with these really long hours and I think it's illegal, I'm not happy, anything like that, or just anything that's going on is considered high-level security, you're not allowed to tell anybody, So if I had said anything, I would have been assigned the condition of treason, which is what you get assigned for out security. I would have had to do amends, and if I kept doing it, I would have ended up on the rehabilitation project force.
Do you have something you wanted to add to that?
Well, at least with me, but I know this is with other people, you get into such a state of mind, we're clearing the planet and all this, and it's your own well-being is so unimportant that the Sea Org's image is your image. And I remember, people asked me about it, public Scientologists, and I would kind of totally protect it. I was like a protective mother. Even if I lived in the worst place, someone asked me, that was thinking of getting recruited, asked me about it, I'd be like, they're nice rooms. Oh yeah, oh, it's good food, and I'm friends with everyone. My life is, going so well. And, I have such a better education right now than the public schools. Have you heard what's happening in public schools? I mean, we're just the top people on the planet.
But this isn't true.
No,
Can I
would know I was lying because I felt like everyone had to think that the Sea Org was so good and everyone had to respect Scientology because it was this, it was the most important thing on the planet. And I don't know.
She'd been indoctrinated since she was born.
Since I was born. So for me, it was I was protecting them, and everyone had to understand how important and how they should respect.
I would like to say though that as Astra's father, I was on the receiving end of this, and so, but I didn't actually know that Astra was totally prohibited from seeing me. So that I knew, she mentioned that she would collect the statistics. So literally every Thursday night, she would have to stay up all night. but then she was allowed to sleep in like Friday morning, right?
Right.
So then she would sneak round, because I bought her a car, so partly so that I could get to see her. She would sneak round every Friday morning and visit with me, because we were close as a father and daughter. And then when she went into the Sea Org, I had extracted promises. I said, well, you must finish your education, you know, and I've heard these horror stories about people working all night, and I used to, and I want you to get proper sleep. I want you to get proper nutrition. I was promised all these things by her and her senior. So every Friday morning I would say, Astra, you know, how's school? And she would say, fine. And I'd say, you know, what did you study? Oh, math. You know, how's your sleep? Fine. So I knew that I was being BS'd, basically. I could just sense it. But I didn't dare say, come on, why don't you tell me the truth, what's going on? Because, you know, Astra, she seems so into it. I was just afraid that I would be cut off as a parent, that I wouldn't see her again.
Barrier, isn't there?
There's a barrier, yeah.
There's some barrier that everyone is afraid to
And
cross.
it's true.
And
It's
then
true
she
because I
would-
was terrified of being told I could never see him anymore. So I didn't want him to say anything to me that I would know what they would consider bad.
And eventually your
Because then
fear
I'd
came
have
true.
to admit it.
And then
I'd have to admit it, and then I'd be told I could never see him again. So I wanted him to think I was doing okay.
So everybody's play acting with everybody.
Yeah.
Plus, there's
And
already
everybody's
such a,
afraid to say what they're honestly
And
And
I
then
tell you what
Astra
that
would-
does to your mind is just unbelievable. You no longer know what is going on in your mind. You no longer know how you feel. You no longer know what's true, what's black, what's white. You don't know anything. I had my mind was just a mess.
And then she would, because I was what they call disaffected at this point, I paid lip service to Scientology, but I personally no longer liked it, no longer had any intention of spending more money on it. And so then I would ask Astra a few questions about school and her health, and then she would immediately switch to, Dad, you need to get back on course. Dad, you need to buy more auditing.
well, this was my
Dad,
drilling of what to do.
and I
of
would
what
then
was, how
say,
had
then
to
I would
handle
play
you.
my part. I would then say, oh, Astra, yes, I've just, works really hard, and I just, I fully intend to do more auditing. Because, I hated lying, and I hated being a part of it, but I was just terrified that both of my daughters were in the Sea Org, and I'd heard so many horror stories of parents who just never saw their children disappeared.
Well, and the stories are true.
Yeah.
Because I used to sneak off to see him. I wasn't allowed to see him, and I wasn't really allowed to have the car. But I lied and said I paid for the insurance myself, and it was all mine. So if they'd known he paid for the insurance and stuff, that's an external influence. So I was questioned about that by RTC.
How do you think these people have managed to gain such an incredible degree of control over people like you and you?
Oh, it's very gradual.
It's gradual, and then it's very easy to do with the people who have family in it, because that's right over your head. Like I couldn't just walk away because my family was in it and they never talked to me again. And after time, it's okay. It's the thing where you think everything's your fault and you're a bad person, and you don't want to be a bad person. You don't want everyone to look at you badly. You don't want your family to never speak to you again. And you really do think that this organization, even though, you think they're saving mankind, and you just think we're going through like a rough time right now, but it's our fault and we need to handle it. And I always had this thought, like, soon it will get better. Soon we will save mankind and we won't get in trouble all the time, Soon things will smooth over. Soon we'll be getting Scientology expanded all over the planet, and and then no longer will everyone be yelling at us all the time.
Why do you suppose the three of you were able to see the truth of the situation, and your mother obviously hasn't?
Well, we've talked about it, like, between the three of us to kind of try and figure it out, because for me personally, the whole time I was there, a little voice in the back of my mind was saying to me, why is this all true, what Scientology says, just because they say so? If I had been born into, the Christian religion, any other religion, another cult, what they would be saying would be true. So why is this true, just because I was born into it? I think with my mom, her mom's in Scientology. Her mom's in the Sea organization. And I think my mom always was trying to please her mom because her older sister was very successful, and she wasn't like her older sister, so she's always trying to please her mom. I think that's how she got. I don't know, this is just my assumption.
Yeah, we can't be sure.
Mm-hmm.
And then when she came into the Sea organization, she kept moving up and up and up onto higher posts, and that made her very important, and she got a lot of importance out of that. And I mean, she was known and is known in this organization for being even more fanatical than most. She'll scream and yell at people. She'll really, really get into things, even more than a lot of the other Sea Org members.
In the early days of the Sea Organization, she'd been on the L. Ron Hubbard had gone around the Mediterranean on a ship called the Apollo, and so she'd been on that ship with Hubbard, and she'd met him, and so she was really caught up in it.
So
and,
she had been in the Sea Org, and then she was out of the Sea Org, and then she went back in?
Well, actually, I think she'd been a student, and she'd been sent there for training, not specifically in the Sea Org, but she'd met Hubbard, so that had a huge impact on her. And her attitude was, you know, this man Hubbard is so great, so wonderful, and if only you'd met him, you know, you would want to do everything you could to help Scientology. And so but I had a kind of a curiosity in my mind. I would ask her, you know, tell me about the upper levels of Scientology, you know, and why is it you people hate psychiatrists? You know, I've met some psychiatrists, I think they're nice people, I think they want to help people, and she would like, how dare you say that? How dare you question?
Was this before you were a Scientologist?
No, I think, well, I'd done some courses, and so, you know, but nothing.
But you weren't yet.
I wasn't yet really into it, right? But we got
you were getting into.
Right, but we were married, and so, you know, I thought there'll be like an open exchange of ideas, but really, she was shut off, you know.
So she was already a dedicated Scientologist.
Exactly,
before
yeah.
you even met her.
Yeah.
And
right.
then did you meet because you came in and started taking these courses?
Yes. Yeah. Exactly. And then we started to date, and you know, I always admired her because she'd done, you know, the higher levels, and she was so highly trained.
And what do you think attracted her to you?
Well, at the time, I was one of the few people I'd graduated in architecture, I had a job, I had a car, I had a place to live, and
these
honestly,
things were appealing.
These things, no one else really in the London organisation, you know, had those things, had prospects, had a job, you know, they were all living hand to mouth, and so I think she just saw that I was some kind of meal ticket, you know, she wasn't actually working, you know, she didn't have a proper job.
My mom was she was having some strange people watch Matthew because she couldn't afford to pay for him to go to proper daycare. She was having to borrow money from her parents because she wasn't making any money working at the London Org because they didn't make a lot of money. You know, she was totally stretched thin, and then along comes my dad, who, you know.
I mean, with my mother, I've always thought that she kind of felt a responsibility towards having us raised in the Sea Org, because, like, when you're not even if you're on the same level in Scientology, like spiritual training, you're not allowed to talk about it with anyone. And she was already way ahead of my father in spiritual training. And it's kind of like a barrier there, because there's things you can't talk about, and it kind of puts a strain on the relationship just because you can't talk about them, or there's things one person knows and the other one doesn't. So she kind of was like, I guess her attitude was like, oh, I know this, and they just don't know it.
Well, you feel a bit superior, don't you?
Yeah, totally. So that's what I think.